Hey guys, Will here, and Phil wanted me to come and talk to you a little bit about my Fuji X-T1. This is one of my favorite cameras right now. I recently got it, well, I don't know what recently, a few months ago. I'm a freelance cinematographer and photographer, so I'm dealing with cameras all the time. I finally broke down and purchased my X-T1. It's a mirrorless camera by Fuji, has interchangeable lenses, and the reason I got it was because I wanted a camera that I could take around with me everywhere. Something that I could do street photography with, something that I could toss in my laptop bag that I always have with me. I don't necessarily would recommend this for a professional use at like a wedding per se. I do bring it as a backup camera and do wide shots for my weddings and stuff like that because it's fantastic. I still typically shoot on Nikons and Canons for bigger stuff. So I just want to run through the anatomy of this camera really quick, just to show you all the ins and outs. One of my favorite things is about how physical the camera really is. This is the 18-55 kit lens that came with it. It does have interchangeable lenses, so you can see we can take this off and you can see the sensor there. It has a great set of lenses that you can buy. There's a lot of really cool stuff. On the top here, you can see this is the physical aperture ring along with the zoom and the focus. This camera has fantastic autofocus, so you might not be using that as much. Here you can set to physical aperture, or you can put it on auto aperture. So you see there's a lot of ways you can just pick this up, put on auto, or you can have all your dials and dial everything in on your own. One of my favorite things about the Fuji is how physical the layout is. It's really mimicking an old 35mm DSLR, even though it's a mirrorless. You can see I've got my exposure compensation here, I've got my shutter here, and then my ISO is right on top. And all of these are physical files, physical dials that I can change just right on the top. It's really awesome. I tend to use the exposure compensation more when I'm using metering and also for time lapses that it does. We have a Wi-Fi button here that we can use to send photos straight to my phone for Instagram. And then off and on movie photos, again another button here that you can set for focus or for aperture or shutter. It has a back ring as well on your thumb, and then a diopter dial, and also if we move it up here, here is where you can select a physical single mode, continue low, continue high, or bracket shooting. It also has a really awesome panoramic mode, which is kind of like the thing on the iPhone, but with a much heftier sensor and fantastic looking images. Nice buttons right here. The buttons are a little small for me, but I'm getting used to it. It's pretty quick. Autofocus lock and auto exposure lock, as well as play and trash. So it's really everything is here. It's physical. I never have to go in and use a touch. It's not a touch screen, but I never have to go in and touch stuff if I don't need to. I've got everything out here physically. It's very similar to a DSLR. So it uses an SD card, which is great because it's small. You can see here, you click in right here, and I have a 32 gig SanDisk 20 megabytes, which has been fine. I haven't done a lot of like intense shooting. If you're gonna do raw photos and you're taking a lot of photos, I would recommend having a much faster card. But standard little SD card, 32 gigs, has been lasting me a really great amount of time. Something really great about this camera that has really transitioned me from DSLRs to the mirrorless is the fact that the internal LED screen inside here is much nicer than any other camera I've seen. It actually auto detects when you put your eye up to it, and it turns off the back screen here, so you can shoot either way. And it's really quick. There's no lag when you're looking through there. It looks like a live camera, and the best part about this is that when I focus and take the picture, it feels like an actual DSLR. I've had that little stutter, that little focus stutter with a lot of other mirrorless cameras and older digital cameras, but this really responds to me well, and it makes me feel like I'm really using a big, full DSLR camera. It's been a great transition. This is a back screen that's movable and adjustable, so if you're shooting low or you're shooting high, you can kind of point it down with whatever you're doing. It's really great. It's not touchscreen, but it's beautiful, beautiful screen. So let's just jump into the menus really quick. You can see here I press the menu button, and each one you can go down the settings here. We have camera settings and then physical settings inside. You can do autofocus, you can adjust your ISO settings right here. You can put it at a cap so your auto will only go as high as you want or as low as you want. Here's where you adjust image size. You can actually set different buttons to get to this quicker, but in the menu you're able to do all these different sizes, which is great depending on how you're shooting or what you're shooting. Image quality, again, you can always do fine, normal, fine and raw, normal and raw and raw. I tend to do fine and raw because I like to have the raw image, but then I also want to use photos to post online very quickly. So here under film simulation, you can kind of simulate different Fuji looks that they've made for you. Here's Velvia, they have Astia. It's a lot of stuff that Fuji's kind of come up with that'll give your photos a look right in camera. They're kind of fun to play with, and depending on what you're shooting. I tend to use the standard Provia look, which is still beautiful and the colors are amazing. If we continue down here, there's self-timer, interval timer shooting. This is great for when you want to do time lapses. It's all internal. White balance I tend to have on auto because it does do fantastic white balance. You can get to that quickly. You can then go in and dial in your color, sharpness, highlight tone, shadow tone. It's pretty cool. Noise reduction I haven't messed with too much, but I hear it's great. More long exposure. There's an optimizer on the lens. There's also a manual focus mode where you can split just like those old rangefinders where you can actually see the focus inside the digital viewfinder in there. Your AE lock, your AF lock, flash compensation, red eye removal, your movie setup. This actually does 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames and 24 frames and 60 frames. So I haven't messed with that too much. I hear the video is not that great on it, but the fact that I'll do 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames is really fun to play with. It has an internal mic as well. Here you can go down and see wireless communication. We can set up our Wi-Fi. There can be a quiet shutter or like a physical shutter that you hear. Just a bunch of settings everywhere. So let's jump down to the regular full-blown settings, date and time. You can set up time difference and tell it like where you are, sound setup, screen setup, really everything. Here's where I change all the button dial settings where you can change these 4 buttons back here. I'm not sure if you can see them, but they're around the menu. You can change those to be specifically with what you want. Focus rings, power management, you can have the battery saved if you're only doing single shots. Just a ton of different things that you can really change here. And of course on the last wrench menu, here's where you format the card. You hit OK. I'm not going to format this card because I have photos on there, but it's a nice big white screen, lets you know what you're doing. It's the only screen that looks white. I really love that Fuji did that. It's really nice and apparent. There's a whole new set of menus. If you press play and then you hit menu here, here's a bunch of new different sets of menus. You can talk to your wireless communication. You can actually edit the different photos within reviewing them, like erase them, crop them, resize, or protect them. I've used that a couple times. It's kind of fun. Again, you can get back to the red eye removal. You can start to build a slideshow. It's a lot of stuff inside this little camera that you can do. If you have a printer that you have hooked up, you can actually print order, which you can select the photos that you want to print. And again, same settings. You can get back here under the wrench settings and get to the same stuff that you were in the other menu. So this is my Fuji X-T1. I highly recommend this camera if you're looking for something that's a little less expensive than a full-blown DSLR, something that is small, lightweight, it's weatherproofed, you can kind of take it wherever. It's great for street photography. It's got a really nice clean look to it too. It's really mimicking those old 35mm cameras, and it's just a beautiful, fun camera. I wouldn't recommend it for full-blown professional photography, but if you're just walking around the street, you want to get some fantastic images, you love photography as an art, this is a fantastic camera for you to have.